Yo guys, Coach Theo here on Common Sense. Today we're gonna answer the question, which diet is better for weight loss? Is it a high-fat, low-carb sort of keto diet or a low-fat, high-carb diet? The answer is it doesn't really matter, guys. Either could work. The macronutrient you should be focusing on the most at all times really, but for weight loss too, is protein. A lot of people don't get this because of course protein has been associated a lot with the gym and fitness, with all these protein products, protein bars, whey, protein powder, and of course you do need protein to build muscle. It's just that you don't really need these protein products. Don't get me wrong, they can have their place. I do have some whey myself, but your meats, eggs, fish will always be a superior source. But protein is very important for weight loss. So we're going to talk about the high fat and low fat kind of diet, but let's first talk about why protein is so important. So first of all, it is the most satiating macronutrient, meaning that if you make it a goal to eat 30 to 50 grams of protein with each meal that you have, you're just more likely to stay fuller for longer, satiated, happy. If you're in a calorie deficit, it will be easier to be in a calorie deficit if you make protein the central focus of your meals. Second thing is that protein is the macronutrient that it takes the most energy for the body to digest, meaning that you will burn more of the energy that you take in when you eat protein. So there is some nuance to the whole calories in, calories out thing, that of course, in order to burn fat, you need to use more energy than you take in from eating, but even what you eat can affect how much energy you burn. So in this case, protein, you burn a bit more of the food, of the protein that you eat, of the calories that you eat. The last thing is that protein is the macronutrient that goes into building the kind of tissue that we want, like muscle, or your skeleton, ligaments too. But so making protein a focus of your diet when you're losing weight is going to be important anyway, but especially when you combine it with resistance training. This is another thing. Of course, people think they have to do all this cardio to lose weight, and of course you can, but resistance training it's both a great long-term strategy. Well, it's for many. Now we're talking about weight loss, but muscle mass is healthy. It's not just pretty, it is good to have muscle, but so, putting on more muscle, you have higher energy expenditure and you burn more energy all the time, even when you sleep. But especially if you're someone that has a bit more fat now and could, more fat than you want to have, and you could have some more muscle mass, not only is it that you now, in your calorie deficit, can burn fat, you can actually put on muscle if you eat enough protein and train hard at the same time. And so more of the energy you take in will go into building this muscle, but also even not only the protein, the energy. Like now we're talking about protein and that, but really it takes the other energy you use. You need more energy to recover from training when you're more of a rookie. This is something I see when I train people in the gym. I do some personal training now too, but when I did it more a few years ago, I had similar regimens for all my clients. Couple of most people skinny fat, like I said, a bit more fat than they want to have, a little bit less muscle than they want to have. 2 full body workouts per week, progressive overload, and I just tell them to eat more protein. And while not even trying actively to lose weight, they would always end up losing some fat at the same time. So especially if you make that more of a focus, it's going to be a great thing. Protein, always focus on protein. And when we talk about, before we go into the other stuff, if we say a high protein diet, it's like relatively to you don't need as much of each macronutrient. Protein is likely to be the one you eat the fewest calories from. So a good goal is 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, or 2 per kilo body weight ish, but goal body weight, because it's not that if you're very overweight that you would need more protein. But this should be said too, more protein than that, it's not really beneficial for building muscle. After that point, it doesn't really, you will convert it to glucose in the body, but eating more protein, it won't hurt unless you have some kind of kidney issues before and it's kind of burdensome for your body to get a whole bunch of extra protein. It can be a good strategy to go even higher on the protein. I'm just saying, when we're talking about training, it's a little parenthesis in this video, but it's not that the more protein you eat, the better for building muscle, but it definitely won't hurt. It can actually be a good thing to keep the protein very high when you're trying to lose weight. So we talk about the other diets, people often assume that I'm into a high-fat, low-carb diet because I'm into the prolonged fasting. They're kind of associated, but I'm not. I've done the keto diet in the past, and look, the extreme diets are rare, or in life in general, the extremes are rarely the answer unless you find yourself in an extreme position. Like if you're diabetic or have some other health issue, yeah, a keto diet might be a good intervention. And for some, I'm not an expert on this, some diabetics maybe even a long-term strategy. But for the typical person, like the extreme, like again, the keto diet could be something you do for a bit, but no, like you need both fats and carbs for different things in the body. You need both balance. It's like with a vegan and carnivore diet. If I had to choose, I would always go with a carnivore diet, but both can serve a purpose as an intervention, but rarely would it be a good idea to be any of these like forever, right? And so I think the low fat kind of diet, it's not as trendy. It was more trendy some decades ago with all the low fat stuff. I think now it's mostly within the more mainstream fitness industry that people still kind of do it. And I think also the person that doesn't really do any research and just, I'm gonna try to lose weight, that kind of person might think it's a good idea to go low fat. But really guys, it's like, when I work with clients, I give them macronutrients, but I always say that, look, first, this is a sort of ideal. If you can get this ratio of macros, that would be great, but the total amount of calories matters the most. And get the protein, and then whatever you need to do to get together and stick to the calories. If you go higher on the fat that I said and lower on the carbs, but the calories are right, then you get your protein, or vice versa with the fats and carbs. It's not really that big of a deal. It's like when I'm bulking, like ideally I would like to get most of my calorie surplus from carbs, but I have such high energy expenditure at this point. I need to eat so much, it's kind of bothersome. So I tend to just cook with more fat and throw in more nuts in my protein yogurt that I eat. But it wouldn't be ideal to go low carb when bulking. It's never optimal for performance. It's just not to go even in a calorie surplus if you eat low carb. But within a certain range, it's not a huge difference. If I get my at least 300 grams of carbs, it's not gonna if I ate 400 grams of carbs and 300, it's not gonna be a huge difference. But if I ate 50 grams of carbs versus 300, that would be a big difference. But yeah, I give clients macros, but I don't say really let's go on a low fat or a high fat low carb diet. It's from a case by case thing too. I have one client that has another health condition, and he has done research on his own to find out that okay, a keto diet is beneficial for this, and it turns out he's doing better with his condition, and then of course we do that. But that would be the last thing I say in this video, that people like to think they're so unique, find what works for me. You gotta find the right diet for me. Well, you're not as much of a snowflake as you think, most likely. It's pretty much the same thing that works for most people. That being said, someone could just find that cutting down the fat works better for me, and someone else could find that cutting down the carbs works better for me. The important part, where you're never going to be unique, is that you need to end up in a calorie deficit, okay? But it's going to be, so that's the same thing, but then maybe slightly different things will help different people, okay? I'll say this, because the very low fat diet, I just think you're gonna get some hormonal deficiencies from that, and to be honest, long term on a keto, high fat low carb diet too, I've heard about women who lose their hair from being on a keto diet long term. But when I say why I think the keto diet can be very effective for fat loss sometimes, there are two things really, because I've used it to lose weight in the past. Once before I even got into starting this channel and that, and when I started all of this, that because I had done it once before, that was my go-to too, and it did work for me initially, but it would always stall at the point. And I think it's two things. I think, first of all, it is an elimination diet. You're eliminating high carb foods, so you just have fewer foods to pick from, and a natural effect of that can just be that you eat less. The second thing, that's just my theory, is that when you suddenly, the body will be kind of shocked, you suddenly eat all this fat and almost no carbs, probably the body isn't as efficient at the gluconeogenesis, converting the fats into glucose in the body, so probably just takes more energy to do that. But because this is what I see, both from my own experience but with other people, that keto often works well initially, but then there comes a point when the magic sort of seems to be gone. So yeah, guys, protein and resistance training, and we'll throw in, I have many videos on weight loss, moving a lot. Like cardio is going to be great, but even just walking, kinds of movement, resistance train, eat protein, do whatever you need to do with other foods and macros to end up in a calorie deficit, and you'll be golden. And of course, I'd always want you to implement prolonged fasting. I'm gonna start cutting soon. You see, it's kind of gross how fat I am right now. I'm just kidding, of course. But for me, I'm actually at some kind of moderate fatness right now. I weigh 87 kilos, was up to 90 peak bulk. I kind of sort of ended up recomping because I was so stressed. I ended up just eating less and burning more energy. But I will cut down a few kilos. So I can make, if you tell me in the comments, I can make a video if you want, tell you how I'm gonna do my cuts. And I of course coach these things, holistic bodybuilding. My phone is gonna die, so send me a DM if you want the coaching. Please subscribe, like, comment. I gotta end this video so it doesn't cut off. Peace.